That was my most thrilling survival experience. We faced a clan with a giant excavator, and they controlled the entire desert. But this was no ordinary clan. It was a team of Chinese players using cheats and glitches to transfer resources deep underground, into places where regular players could never reach. But we managed to uncover their secret, and filled with curiosity and excitement, we boldly headed into one of their mysterious caves. Created by AI voices. Me and my buddy Harry been roaming around this server for like 2 days straight. We scoped out every clan that crossed our path. After grinding through the server, we find out about this massive clan. They've got the giant excavator locked down and control most of the desert biome. I've been keeping an eye on them for a few days now. They've been fortifying their territory, building a couple towers near the quarry, and for some reason, they decide to move out. It takes them a few days and a bunch of tries, cause they abandon one of the random houses too. In the end, they relocate to a totally new spot, which we of course tracked down. Their new base wasn't as dope as the old one, cause they set up right across from this cave, which I'm guessing had all their main loot. So, I snuck over to their spot and found something kinda wild. The pipes I saw were like snakes, twisting and going deep underground. They made the whole place feel kinda sketchy, like something hidden and creepy was lurking beneath the surface. If this turns out to be true, the KB clan's keeping all their main loot in one of these caves. I found like 3 entrances, and any of them could be hiding their stash. Stumbling on this hole that led into one of the caves, I decided to jump in. Felt like if I messed up, there'd be no getting back up, but today, luck was totally on my side. Crazy luck and a bunch of coincidences led me straight to the back entrance of the cave. The other side was all stone, with a bunker set up you could break through to get inside. Perfect timing. My buddy brought me some wood and a few metal fragments. With that, I crafted a homemade pistol and busted through the thatch roof. The amount of resources didn't surprise me. What was hidden inside was way more interesting. What secrets did this cave hold? The only things I found in there were a couple of weapons and a level 2 workbench, but unfortunately the exit was sealed. Still, there was a silver lining. One of the 3 caves turned out to be a dud. Now it was just a matter of figuring out which of the 2 left was the real treasure stash. We're gonna need 100 plus of rockets to pull this off. If the cave's well fortified and the pipes really run through the terrain, we'll have to break through at least 5 layers of walls. That's like 100,000 sulfur. We could try getting our first batch of resources from the old KB base they abandoned. This base was abandoned just a few days ago, and there were still intact towers where players were sleeping. As far as I know, part of the clan got banned for using cheats. To reach those sleeping players, I needed to find the tool cupboard, which was almost on the roof of the house. After finding the tool cupboard, a whole bunch of new options opened up. I started breaking the house down bit by bit, found around 2,000 metal and a bunch of random junk. But the best part, I got to this guy, a Chinese player who was sleeping like a baby. And that's how we got our first batch of resources. Building a base wasn't part of our plan. We decided to crash at the abandoned clan's checkpoint for now. We had enough weapons to get started, but the big problem was still there. We needed to find 100,000 sulfur, a tier 3 workbench, and a bunch of other resources. While I was thinking about how to get all that, some randoms fired up the giant excavator, and that was our chance to snag at least some of the loot. They started up the quarry to dig up metal, which we really needed for building. Worried they'd haul in too much, I decided to take action. I snuck deep into the quarry, grabbed some of the diesel and hid it with my body, like I'd vanished into the shadows. Since the quarry had just one entrance, we figured it was the perfect chance to set up an ambush. I grabbed my only weapon. After all, you can never have too much metal, right? And let's be real, our little base was gonna rot away sooner or later anyway, so we had nothing to lose. The quarry kept running for about 10 more minutes, and we stayed hidden the whole time, waiting for our chance. Then, out of nowhere, they finally showed up. So, just like that, we ended up with a massive metal base in our pockets. But we weren't about to take any risks and rush to build it right away. We needed to lay low for a bit. Back at our base, we quickly hid everything and vanished without a trace. So, we managed to slip away from those guys. Just a few minutes later, they were already running around our base, completely clueless that all the resources were practically right under their feet. We waited so long for them to leave that I finally managed to sneak away about 5 squares from our base. I stumbled upon a raid that was packed with players. I thought they were so blind that I could pick up a weapon off the ground without attracting any attention. My guess surprisingly turned out to be right. I have no idea how, but I managed to get out of that hellhole totally. Sucks that I couldn't find the key component for raids. Since they clean out their territory every morning, we could try to lure them into a trap. The only problem, they were about to roll in, and we weren't ready at all. We had to move from the base to an invisible bunker. Before we made the move though, I grabbed the turrets we'd need for my scheme. As the sun set, I kicked off the build. Slowly, we gathered our resources, looking forward to the next day and how we were gonna snag a ton of rockets. This bunker became our temporary fix to keep from losing everything and having to start from scratch. It took us literally just 10 minutes to turn our little place into a bunker that blended perfectly with the rocks. That was a solid way to wrap up our first day of survival. The next morning, just as I expected, the KB clan kicked off their cleanup, starting with the small bases before moving on to other targets. To avoid getting caught in the crossfire, we decided to wait until they were done. We built a little hideout. If it got raided within 2 hours, that meant the cleanup was still on. But if it didn't, that'd be our signal to spring into action and set up the trap. Right before we kicked off building our base, someone took advantage of the KB clan's absence and fired up the giant excavator. That was a huge win for us because extra resources mean extra enemies, and extra enemies mean more explosives. The guys running the quarry were super careless, and I managed to sneak over to a tree that gave me a perfect view of the heliard they flew in on. I hung out behind that tree for about 15 minutes, tense as hell, watching them get ready to launch. I was totally blown away when I saw he had over 1,000 HQM, exactly what we needed. My buddy grabbed the rest of the loot, and we flew back home, excited for the moment we could stash our treasures. A 1,000 HQM gave us a serious edge. While I was sorting through the loot, Harry managed to fly over to the outpost and snag a tier 3 workbench. Since the chopper's flights are visible from far away, Fixbox and his buddy could figure out where we were. After all, it was the only base around the quarry. So, when Harry got back, I grabbed all the important stuff and moved it to the bunker. Then, under the cover of night, I upgraded our temporary base so the KB clan would notice it, but it turns out our place was discovered by some other guys instead. It was Fixbox. We thought they were just regular duo players, but it turned out they had big balls. The next night, they showed up to raid our base. Unfortunately, they brought way too little explosives. They wouldn't even be able to fully take down our base. So, I was pretty sure Fixbox and his buddy would come back. I used a secret tactic to teleport up into a tree, getting ready for the next showdown. I barely waited a couple minutes before they showed up right in front of me. This raid was about to end before it even got started. My job was to take them out before they even had a chance to start shooting. Two C4s and a few stacks of explosive rounds came in clutch. This was the start of our path to raiding the cave, but Fixbox caught onto our plan and right in front of me, chopped down the tree, taking out my hiding spot. After we successfully fought off 2 attacks in a row, the enemies finally went quiet, like they just vanished. Meanwhile, some clans started setting up in our area, clearly preparing for something big. They built up insanely fast, like they didn't have a second to waste. I'm pretty sure they put that base up just to use the giant excavator. Everything pointed to them having some big plans. If they built a base like that, it means they plan to use the quarry for a long time. We should wait a bit for them to dig up as many resources as possible and then swoop in and take it all. Thanks to Fixboxel, we now had enough explosives to pull off this raid without any issues. Choosing the right moment, I grabbed all the explosives we had and we set off to find out what was hiding in their base. It was perfect timing. The whole clan was at the quarry and they probably didn't even realize what was happening at first since it all went down so fast. I decided to seal off all the entrances and set up a couple turrets, making sure they'd never get into our base again. When everything was set, one of them tried to up from the bed, but unfortunately for them, that base was already ours. A few seconds later, the old owners started buzzing around our house. Now we were surrounded and we needed to come up with a plan. These guys probably belonged to a big clan and could bring explosives to smash down some doors and take everything back. I decided to risk it all and seal off all the important resources on the second floor, turning it into something like a bunker. I was hoping they wouldn't figure out where all their loot went and just think we took it back to our base. Now we needed to distract them and grab the most useless loot, pretending like everything was really in our base just to die with them. Now we needed to distract them and grab the most useless just to die with them loot, pretending like everything was really in our base. Now all we could do was hope our plan would work. So I got up and, playing my part, dramatically opened the doors for them, showing nothing but empty crates behind them. Everything went down exactly as I predicted. They broke the door and found empty crates inside. I already had plan B ready, to get up and trap them in that house. Everything was done perfectly. Now we needed to get some explosives from them and lure them into our fake house, which had zero loot, like, at all. We were, to put it mildly, shocked when those guys just vanished. Turns out, they killed themselves and passed the loot outside. Now our house was in danger, and hauling a bunch of diesel and explosives over there was super risky. So, on the way back, I decided to make a small stash. Now our house only had weapons for defense and a bit of not so valuable loot left. In just a couple of minutes, those guys would be at our doorstep with explosives, so we had to get ready for the showdown. While they were blowing up our walls, I was chilling, gathering loot and moving it to the second floor, trying to stay under the radar. Now they were completely trapped in our house with no way out. After that, I stood up in our hideout, grabbed the Thompson, and went out to finish off the last survivors. That guy turned out to be the last one standing. A few minutes later, I found out they'd left the server and the whole area went quiet. Now, we had to move all our loot from one bunker to another to lock in the win and gear up for whatever's next. By the way, you're looking at all the loot we snagged from that clan right now. These are the trophies we earned through some serious risk and slick moves. And that wraps up our second day of survival. In just 24 hours, we didn't just secure our spot, but also defended what's rightfully ours. When we logged in the next morning, we were shocked to find our base reduced to rubble. Same thing happened to Fixbox's base. It was nothing but a pile of wreckage. That could only mean one thing. The KB clan finished wiping the area, leaving nothing but dust behind. In those days, the KB clan was super active. One group was busy expanding their base, while another was running the excavator. It was clear they were gearing up for something big. This wasn't the best time to set up our traps, since it would take hours to build, so I decided to mess with them a bit and disrupt their tower building instead. I have no idea whose body that was, but it's definitely going to come in handy. And that body completely shocked me. I had no idea what was going on in their territory. It was also bizarre that I just decided to get out of there. I managed to escape without any issues, and slowly we began to restore our base, striving to regain some sense of security. After a while, we noticed that the KB clan had vanished. It's as if they had evaporated, leaving us in relative peace. Meanwhile, a crowd of people gathered around the massive excavator, eager to start it up and seize our resources. Of course, it wasn't a whole box of metal fragments, but even these resources turned out to be quite useful for us. Every little thing counts when it comes to survival. By the way, that's the heli they left behind. We took out the first group, and just 20 minutes later, another bunch of loot hunters showed up. Since KB was nowhere to be found, it was the perfect chance to grab everything for ourselves. I spotted where they parked and, moving carefully, started flanking them from behind. These resources were more than enough for me. Plenty of weapons and metal fragments, everything we needed to keep building our trap that could give us a real edge in the future. Finally, everything felt quiet, giving us a perfect opportunity to put our plan into action. We started by constructing the tower, a crucial element upon which much of our scheme depended. Once that was complete, we moved on to building the decoy house, designed to lure our enemies into the trap and secure a decisive advantage for us. In total, it took about 3 hours to complete everything. During that time, I finished building the house and set up several traps, access to which was solely controlled by Harry. Without his help, I wouldn't have been able to utilize them, and he was indeed the key to the successful execution of our plan. While Harry was transferring the remaining resources, I managed to meet one of the KB members. He showed me his territory and led me to his friend, who ultimately killed me, but I didn't give up and returned to the same spot. Thanks to my knowledge of Chinese, I was able to eavesdrop on their conversation.
每天的活动就炸家。
沿着围墙走过来了，他搞不好就在门外阴你。
哎呀，我就跟街溜子一样，随便玩，让人给我打死，打死了以后，
在这里，我出去我去开那个门啊，他可能在门外。
And that's when I realized they opened the map and started looking for our base.
哎，密码是多少啊？密码多少来着？
I was thinking they'd roll up to raid us with their whole team, but there were only about 4 of them online. That gave us a chance to prep for the cave raid and snag some sulfur with the giant excavator. I collected sulfur after sulfur, handing all the loot to Harry, but even with all our efforts, no one showed up. We kept stacking up on sulfur, making the most of every moment we had. I built a small furnace room. Time dragged on, but with each passing minute, we were getting more prepared. The bubbling energy and hard work soon turned into exhaustion for Harry, and he decided to take a nap. While he was out, I focused on studying explosives and guarding our home. The game days rolled on and Harry continued to drift in a dream world, probably dreaming of our victory and the abundance of resources from the cave. But he really needed to wake up because a chopper was already flying towards our place, signaling the arrival of a new threat, or maybe even new opportunities. It was definitely the KB clan we'd been waiting for all this time. But with my buddy Harry asleep, things weren't going according to plan at all, and I had to act fast to fix the situation. Right now, you can see our plan falling apart. Harry's not around and the KB clan is blowing up one of our traps. Everything we worked so hard for is starting to crumble. At that moment, I totally lost control of the situation, and Harry was supposed to log in literally in 5 to 7 minutes. They would have been dead already if I had the chance to use the traps. I ran out of ammo to take them out. Harry was just about to log in, but the traps were useless since they completely took over the roof. We weren't about to give up though. Our chances of winning were slim, but they were still there. While Harry was coming in, they had already breached half the roof and were practically at the TC. After I placed my TC, I could finally try to take control of the situation. And that seemed really weird to me, like it was some kind of cheats. With our combined efforts, we managed to take out everyone and take control of the situation. First things first, we had to fortify the entire house to ensure maximum protection, and only then could we think about our next move. We fortified part of the house, and I started searching through all the bodies for rockets to stash on the first floor. When I realized we had about 80 rockets piled up along with the gunpowder we looted from the quarry, I decided to leave the house with all the rockets and stash them as far away from the KB clan as possible. I don't know how, but I managed to get out of that hellhole. Sure, it sucks I didn't get to use the traps, but maybe I can pull it off in the next video. No matter what, we managed to outsmart Clan KB and hide the most important components for raiding their caves. They didn't even suspect that this whole raid was meticulously planned by us. While they reveled in their false victory, thinking we were defeated, I closely studied their raid base. At first glance, their fortifications seemed invulnerable, and their defenses impenetrable. But I spotted a small weakness. This was a real find, a chance to flip the script and get back everything that belonged to us. To pull it all off, I just needed a hammer. I had to turn off all the turrets, grab everything and dip in their helicopter. This was our shot and we weren't about to let it slip away. It seemed like everything was under control, but the dude snoozing in the cockpit was seriously throwing me off, so I sat down to take him out. I wasn't lucky enough to avoid one of the raiders, but no point in stressing over it. We snatched nearly 100 rockets from this raid, so now it was just about catching some sleep and coming back the next day to get revenge on Clan KB. The next day, we first gathered all the remaining resources from our half-destroyed home. Without wasting any time, we built a small but sturdy base to have a safe haven if needed. Once that was done, we gathered our strength and decided to pay a visit to the clan, knowing it was time to settle the score and show them what we were made of. As I approached their base, I was stunned by the ruins that left me in shock. Just yesterday, they had built this place, and now there was hardly anything left. Looking ahead, I could say that they were probably banned for playing with a cheater around the time we left the server. For some unknown reason, none of the clans came to raid them. So, we decided to wait about 6 hours for the main base to decay before heading over with our rockets to see if there were any resources left. Harry had to destroy one of their TCs so we could build our raid base there. This was the key move that would allow us to establish control over their territory and continue the raid without any interruptions. Now it was time to see if all their treasures were really stashed in the cave or still left in their base. We were gearing up for a tough challenge, but this was the moment of truth. The first boxes didn't have anything special, so we had to keep searching. It was super annoying when we stumbled upon those boxes with code locks. It pretty much confirmed our theory. Everything valuable was stashed in the cave, just like we thought. All we found was some armor, tier 2 weapons, and a bunch of random junk. The only decent thing we got out of it was this old, but pretty cool, record player. In that Chinese song, it talked about how we needed to craft more rockets from the leftover gunpowder and get ready to raid their cave. That's where the real treasures were hiding, and we'd been chasing them for so long. Now we were all set to blow their cave to smithereens and uncover the truth. It was time to find out what really lay hidden behind their defenses. Just like I mentioned at the start of the video, this cave had at least 5 layers of walls. That made things tricky, but we were ready to tackle any obstacles that came our way. It all looked incredibly beautiful, like they had actually built a treasure vault just like the ancient gods. These were just the first crates, and our curiosity only grew. What could be hidden behind the other walls? We couldn't shake the thought that there might be something truly valuable beyond them. Each new layer held its own mysteries. The deeper we ventured, the more resources we uncovered. We were on the right track, and with every crate we opened, our hope for a successful raid grew stronger. And these were just the first crates of components we found. We had already found over 200 liters of diesel, equivalent to 400,000 sulfur. This was an incredible achievement. We did what we had wanted throughout this wipe. We got our revenge on Clan KB and took all their treasures. Now we had about 500,000 sulfur and tons of other resources. If you enjoyed it, come join my Discord, subscribe to the channel, and hit that like button.